For the brake controller wire that's run to the back of the truck, GM has a pigtail here. So first of all, I've taken the 2 inner fender wells out, and then there's this box right here. So it's got a 13mm right there. Pull that out, pull this cover off, and then if you peel this back, right there is your blue pigtail that you can splice into. And so that is what's connected to the blue down at the back of the truck. Okay, that's connected to the blue wire back there. So now I can run that, or that'll run from my brake control box to the back. On this 2007 GMC cabin chassis, there's an upfitter connection here. And so this is the upfitter connection, and this light blue wire here is where they want you to tap in for the brake pedal circuitry. And so you can find it under the hood, or I should say under the dash, as usual. But apparently, according to GM Bulletin 66, there's too much electronics going on down there, and they want you to pull from here. So what I need to do is I need to get a wire from here to my brake box, and I'm going to go through the cab around and into the cabin. So that's what I'm working on now, and I already showed you the brake line going back. Don't worry about this wire, I was just fishing some stuff. But here's the pigtail that comes standard, and so this is going to go back to my 7-round connector. So I will need to attach this to the brake box as well. And then I wanted to show you my brake box really quickly. I've had the same brake box on like a bunch of different trucks, and so this thing is really old by now. And so I think I paid like 20 bucks for this brand new on eBay. So I've had that box right there in a lot of different vehicles, so I'm just used to it. For going through the firewall, you usually want to try to find a grommet where the factory wiring is already going through, and see if you can just piggyback off of that. So let me just spend a couple minutes and get in here and look. Okay, I got this green wire into that grommet right there, so let's see if I can find it on the inside. And if I can find it in here, I'll just use it to fish the wires. Oh, look at that right there. So I'll use that to fish my wires through. Okay, wish me luck. Hopefully all those wires will come right through here. No problem. Just like that. Okay, so now I have all 4 of my wires in here. And I'm hoping that they're going to be long enough on the other side, because I had a couple of scraps in here. Okay, I wanted to show you this wiring diagram for the brake control box. So the black wire is going to your power, the red is going to that blue wire from the upfitter connector. That is your, what they call your stoplight, that's your brake signal from the brake pedal. White is ground and blue is going back to your 7-way. And so this particular brake control box comes pre-wired. but I'm going to cut this connector off and wire these different ones in directly. Feel how thick this blue wire is. Getting this blue wire to be a really heavy gauge wire is really critical, because that is what determines how much juice gets to the brakes. So I used a piece of the wire that they had used going to the back. When I shortened everything up, I had a bunch of extra wire left over. All right, so there's that side. This thinner blue is coming from that upfitter thing, so that's going to hook to the red. That's my brake signal. And then this is the blue that goes back to the 7-way. To connect these wires, I'm going to be using some heat shrink butt connectors. Now these don't have solder in them, but since we're on an interior application here, we don't really need solder. So I'm going to connect my heavy blue first. So those get pinched, give them a little tug, make sure they're good, and then we can heat shrink them. Okay, and that's an interior connection that should stay working. All right, now let me just hook up the rest of these things. In terms of mounting this thing, you just want to mount it somewhere that's out of the way but yet accessible. So I could mount it right here, but that might interfere with any passengers I have in here or stuff I may want to throw in here. So I think it being tucked in there works pretty well. So let me get that mounted really quickly. I got one, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get the other one. Okay, there it is. Okay, I want to try to get these wires just tucked up under here a little bit better and out of the way of anybody's feet or anything else. We need to make the last 4 connections here, and so black is power, which I think they recommend just going straight onto this power terminal here. Oh, wait a minute, I think they want this one here. Alright, so there's a terminal right there. Wonder if I have a nut that'll fit that thing. Okay, that's gonna fit there. So I'm gonna hold off on connecting it though. On this truck, they're saying this is the negative. They're saying this right here is the negative battery terminal, so maybe I can get a piece under that. Okay. And they want power all the time on these brake control boxes. So it's not one of those deals where the key on with power, they want it all the time. Here at this little pigtail, I'm just going to use a solder heat shrink butt connector. Okay, here I could have used one of these blue connectors, but these things are prone to corrosion, even though in this area these work pretty well, but I wanted a little bit more permanent one, so I used one of those heat shrink solder connectors. What I'm working on now is painstakingly mapping out the colors here. So I've got what each color is supposed to be on the 7-round RV connector, and I'm just testing with my tester here to look and see. So right now I've got the left turn signal on and it's a yellow wire, and check out what the meter is doing. So it's flashing every time that thing lights up. So now I know that my yellow wires here should be going into the red wire on the trailer connector. So I'm just going to map this out, and I got all my wires traced out in my wiring harness here. And so what I want to do is, this was on the truck, and this will give me a plug-in disconnect. So in case this ever gets damaged or I have to replace it, I can just unplug it, so it makes it nice. And so these colors are all correct as far as what they're supposed to be for the function. And so what I'm going to do is wire it into these and get this going. I've been tidying up some of these wires off camera, so I figured I'd bring you guys along. Just getting everything hooked up, and at this point I'm trying to get everything secured. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. This is now a quick disconnect if I ever need to replace this 7-way, if that gets damaged. So that's a lot easier and nicer than having to wire it up every time, which is not that bad, but still. And then this will be a disconnect into the bed lights. So I'll wire the other end of this onto the bed lights, and then I can plug it in, and then here's my reverse light right there. So I've got just a blade connector, a blade connector there. So if I ever need to take the bed off, I can just unplug it instead of having to cut wires. So it's coming along pretty nicely. I'm about to smash something here, so okay, I just got this flatbed brought over here where I can weld it, and so you can see I've got quite a bit to weld underneath every little joint here and here, and then I want to do some stitch welds along the rails right there on the underside of the deck, and then I want to finish welding up all that too for the gooseneck hitch. So I've got quite a bit of welding here to do this morning, and I'm out here in the morning. It's cool. What's been happening is I've been hearing this thing heat up during the day, and it'll kind of pop and flex a little bit, the decking will, and so I wanted to get going in the morning when it's fairly cool and everything's the same temperature. So that's what I'm working on now. To weld this decking to each cross member, I want to make sure that the decking is pressed really well and tightly up against the cross member that I happen to be welding on. And so what I've got going on here is I've got a board just basically underneath the cross member, and then the whole weight of the bed is sitting on that board, and that's what I'm using to make sure that the decking is tight up against the cross member and the frame as I weld it. So as you're going to see, I'm moving this board back and forth every time I weld a cross member and then go back and do the next one. I'm just kind of test fitting this and checking some stuff out. And I think I want to U-bolt it here, but I'm gonna have to cut a hole in these rails. So I just called the local heavy truck parts place and they're gonna make me some U-bolts, the square ones. So what I'm doing right now is I've just marked where these transverse pieces are, the cross members. And so anywhere in between there, I can put one of these U-bolts. And so what I think I'm gonna do is pull the bed back off it and cut some holes for my U-bolts. So they'll be ready in about 2.5 hours, he said. So I think that's where I'm at. I also think I wanna leave it on the bed or on the truck here. So what I'm gonna do is chalk the wheels, put the truck in neutral and just pull it and slide it off and leave it kind of hanging and dangling over here. So that's what I'm working on now. I wanted to put a fancy headache rack on this truck and I wanted it to follow the lines of the body somewhat. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to line up the pieces and eyeball it and make sure it looks right. And I got my two pieces pretty much identical with each other. I usually measure once and weld twice, but on this one I paid really close attention. And what you're going to find out later in the video, if I even still have it in there, is I spent a ton of time and a ton of money on this headache rack, and I suck at just welding angles and cutting angles and finding angles and all that stuff. And so this headache rack turned into a gigantic pain. And you know, one of those deals where everything seems to be going fine until like the very last piece, you hold it up and it looks completely off. Well, that's what happened here. So everything was going great with this thing, and you're going to see coming up that I had some custom work done on it and everything, and then when I actually put it on the finished bed, it was way off. I could not understand how it was so far off. And so I almost just tossed it in the scrap pile, but I ended up cutting it and bending it and just pounding on it. And so I don't think you can tell since I got the toolboxes on there, but this headache rack was a huge headache for me. I will definitely not be going into the custom headache fabrication business. After talking with some friends who have flatbeds, they said that one of their main complaints about them is that there's no place to tie stuff down. And so I was going to do some rub rails on here, but I didn't want the extra 4 or so inches of width on the bed because it was already pretty much 8 feet wide. And so I made the tough call to do some inside stake pockets. And so what I'm doing here is laying them out. And these, what I can do is I can drop a D-ring in there if I have to tie something heavy down, or I can slide in some frame rails and give myself a little bit of a box on the side of this rail. I'm going to be installing this backup camera at the back of the trailer hitch there so I can back onto trailers. But I also want to put a second one up here on the headache rack that shines down or looks down at the cargo, so I can have a cargo area camera as well. And so if you remember, I installed this same one in my King Ranch and it's been doing really well, so I bought 2 more of these. So the first thing I want to do, I suppose, is find some ignition wire here, a wire that's only hot when the ignition's on. What I'm trying to do right now is find a wire that's only hot when the ignition's hot. So there are a couple of connectors down here that aren't hooked to anything. Like this would be a nice one right here, but this one is hot all the time. So the ignition's not turned on right now, and when I check that, it's hot. And so that's not going to work because I want the cameras to go off when the ignition goes off. So I'm going to start looking into some wires that are running that I don't know what they go to. And for that, I'm going to use a different style of tester. This is one that is specifically meant to puncture a wire. And I'm in a little bit different spot, so I want to check my ground and make sure I have a good ground before I start puncturing wires. So right there you can see I'm lighting up, so I have a good ground. So if you look under here, there's a pretty big set of heavy wires right there, and I'm hoping that one of those is linked to the ignition. So I'm going to test some of these. So the way this works is it's spring loaded, so you pop it out, hook it over the wire, and then the end of the testing lead will puncture the wire just a little bit. So what I'm looking for is a wire that's not hot right now, and then when I turn the ignition key on, or turn the ignition on, it will light up. So take your pick for colors. There's the pink. Okay, that's not lit up. Still not lit up. And hopefully I got a good puncture on it. I think I did. Try the yellow here next. Not lit up. So I tested my known power, and I had a bad ground over here, so guess what happened? Check it out. This little connector here, look at this. The pink wire right there. Nothing right, no, not hot at all. Hopefully you can see that, and then watch when I turn the key on. Now I've got full power.
Release the parking brake.
So that's where I'm going to tap in, is on this pink wire. And if I had had a better ground when I tested this connector the first time, I wouldn't have had to tear the dash apart. So that's where I'm going to tie in, is on that pink wire. That is hot on the ignition. And then there I turn the key off. So that's a good place to tap in. And whatever this connector goes to is not being used, and so it's not going to interfere with anything if I suck a little juice off of this wire. I might even get lucky in that there's a ground in there too. So I've set my meter on continuity here, are hooked to ground. Try with the black, I guess. Yeah, so the black is ground, and the gray is ground. But yeah, so we can tap right into this connector here. Pink for our hot, black for our ground. Check this guy out. That is called a leaf-footed bug. I think the family is Coreidae, but these are Hemiptera or Heteroptera, whichever one you want to say. But these are plant suckers. So they have stabbing mouth parts. Whoop, there he goes. And they will suck plant juices. Anyway, let me get to making this connection. I'm going to be installing 2 of these cameras, and you can see just how little juice they take because the wires the power wires are extraordinarily thin. And so I'm going to be making this connection with a interior connector here. So these are the little push connectors. This is what came with the camera there. And so what I want to do is just peel back a little bit to get into some decent wire. Maybe untwist it just enough so I can get into it. And then I'm going to take my 2 wires and grab power. So if I untwist this connector here, I can expose a little length of wire. So I guess I'll do my positive first, my pink, which happens to be pink here, doesn't really matter what color it is. So I'm going to take my 2 reds off the camera and drop onto my power with my connector here. And using these connectors is you don't have to puncture the wire or cut the wire. These connectors don't work that well on the outside of the vehicle. They work okay. I should say they work okay in our area where we don't really have a lot of corrosion and stuff. But up in the mountains or in northern climates, these connectors have a really, really bad reputation. And so we'll just crimp that down and hope we catch all 3 of our wires. And make a connection, so just giving them a short little tug feels like I caught them both. So we'll check it here in a second. Okay, let's do the same thing with the ground. What I have here is the wiring harness, and I plugged it into the camera, which is right here, and I plugged it into the monitor. And then now, this is my power. So let me check both of those new powers I just plugged in, or I should say tied in. Okay, so there's the 2 powers. Okay, so nothing. Let's turn the key on. Oh, look at that. So we know at least one of them's working. And then if we unplug that, plug in the other one here. Okay, so they're both working. Look at that. Taking a picture of me taking a picture. Okay, so we know these are both hot. We know our connection's good under there. We can tidy that up and then bring power up to wherever we're gonna mount our monitors. So in terms of mounting the monitor, I think like maybe here and here. This might take some figuring, so let me work on that for a minute. In my previous installation, I had a nice flat surface here, and I basically just used some double-sided tape on the back here, but I don't have that here. This is like a really smooth, curved surface. And they give you this suction cup, but look what we have here. We've got a threaded stud. So I may be able to drill a hole right here and here, put that stud in there, and then use this mounting bracket. So let me see how we do with that. Think that'll smash out of there? Oh, look at that. There's a little nut in there. That's even better. Yes, this is going to work. Oh, come on. This is definitely going to work. If I can get it off the plastic. There we go. Okay, look at that. So I'm going to drill a hole and mount this through that plastic on the back. And then I'm going to tighten this up, I think. And then I should have room, if I didn't mess up my threads here. But yeah, this should work. Let me do the other one. Maybe one right there. Thought about putting one right here, but I don't think that's gonna work. Really needs to be in the absolute face of this convex part right there. So I guess I'm thinking right there. There's nothing behind there. Okay, now one of these little guys is going to secure the stud to the plastic. So that one wants to be pretty tight. And then we'll place our second one on there. That's going to tighten up against the camera. Gotta hope this doesn't take up too much space. And then the little square mounting piece gets on there. That's gonna want to be up and down too, so I may have to change it a little bit. And then that other one tightens up against that. Those two. Oh yeah, that tightened right up. Look at that. Tightened right up. Let me do the same thing over here. I got it. Okay, so now I just have to level them out a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, and I'll get my wires run. Whoops, not even pointing over here. Get my wires run through here. Actually, I think they're already through there. And get our power up here, and nice. And then I've got the wiring harness I've got to get to the back. So this is what it looks like when it comes out of the package. With this particular camera, these are the wires that go into the camera. And so I'm going to mount one camera facing the ball and one camera on the headache rack. So both of these need to leave the cab and go to the back. Since they're both going in this, or coming from the same place, which is my monitors here and my power here, I'm just going to run them together. So I'm just going to find a way to get them out of the cab. That's what I'm working on now. hot metal raining down on me. Okay. That's a good fit though. So that little rubber grommet just popped right in there. It's really tight. So I can run my wires through there. This truck has got this little access panel on here. Okay, so there are my wires, and there's my new hole. It should power on even though there'll be no picture. Huh. Maybe they don't power on if there's no camera attached. All right. Try the other one. Sweet. Along with those backup cameras, I'm going to be putting in a set of work lights on the headache rack as well. And so when I ordered these lights, I ordered the deluxe wiring harness with it. So basically, if I can get this undone here, we've got power and ground. We've got a relay that can probably just zip tie or mount to whatever. And then this is going to be a switch that has to go through the firewall. And then that's going to be a switch somewhere handy in the dash. So this particular light set, I got the deluxe one. It's got an on-off, and then it's got like a bunch of strobes and other types of flashers on it. So let me work on getting this into the cab. And let me go around and see if I can get that to plug in. Okay, I think we're in business. Let me just route it down, just tie it there. Okay, make it look good. Okay, hopefully that'll stay there. So boom. That does not look too bad. Okay, it's been a little while. I want to show you where I'm at with this project. So I've got a couple of coats of paint on this thing, and this coat is, I coated it again today. It's pretty well dry, but I really want to get this headache rack thing going, and this thing has been the biggest pain. And so what we've got going on here is I had a company fabricate this for me, and the way it works is you take this white panel here and it bolts on the back of this, and it gives you the two-tone coloration. And so I gave this another coat today. It's still a little bit wet right here. But I already had it bolted on there, and I just needed a second coat or whatever, third coat on there. So that is then going to weld into the headache rack itself. And let's see, this is the front here, or this is the back, I mean, so it'll weld into here. So I've already trimmed it and fitted it and everything. I got another coat on this thing. So it's been quite a delay getting that. The fabrication shop that made that for me also made these things for me, because I had a shop make the U-bolts and I didn't have these, so they made those. So that was a little bit of a setback, almost a week for that. This is, okay, here's one I tried to make with my piece of crap plasma cutter. The plasma cutter would cut half of one of these holes before it overheated, and then I'd have to wait like 30 minutes for it to cool down. And then the other thing with this plasma cutter, none of the Lincoln dealers in town carry any parts, any consumables for it. So I've been trying to order them online, and I keep ordering the wrong things for whatever reason. So that thing's been out of commission for a while. And the other thing is this is not quite, I still have a bunch of welding to do on here, but I just really needed to get this coated with paint because it just kept rusting up really badly. And one of the things I need to do is cut out another one of these stake pockets somewhere around in here. And I was going to do that with a grinder, and I wanted to wait till my plasma cutter was back up and running. So just lots of delays, it seems like. But as soon as this headache rack is dry, I'll be bolting that together and then welding it in place. And I really need to get that headache rack welded to the bed, and that'll be a big step. I'm gonna let this paint set up for a little bit longer, and so I'm trying to get some stuff done this evening. So what I want to work on now is getting the supports for my lower toolbox here installed. So the way I did that before is I just kind of held my toolbox up with a floor jack, and then took some measurements, cut my pieces, so everything's ready to go. I think if I can get that welded up, I can start spray painting that and get that rolling. So I think that's what I'm going to work on now. This lower toolbox I was able to find used locally on Facebook. It was a tree guy, he had two of them, and he was turning his flatbed into a dump bed, but the 60-inch really fit underneath here, but it didn't really fit on the top with what I wanted to do. So I only bought one of them. This was $300, and I was pretty excited to find it. It's a buyer's toolbox, which I've used on my other trucks, and I really like these buyer's toolboxes. Okay. On this side here, I've got a support that's located pretty well for where I want the box to be positioned. And so what I did is I had a couple pieces of flat bar here, and that'll suspend it, and then I'll place my angle iron here, and that's what the box will rest upon. So I guess let me get these things tacked in. Okay, there it is. I just got this portion of the headache rack welded in, and so I think it did pretty well. And so what I'm going to try to do now is, this is the paint I used yesterday, and I added a bunch of hardener to it. And so I think it's got like a film on top of it, but I'm going to try to touch up, and hopefully this will work just fine. See how that heated up and discolored a little bit. This thing was definitely a production trying to get it all together. Definitely don't want to drip it on that white. So this one I can pretty much just whatever. About right there, center. So I could put a couple of self-tappers in here maybe, or some double-sided tape might work well too. Probably a couple self-tappers. Activate this double-sided tape a little bit. Alright, I think that's going to be just fine. On there, my wire slid through this little gap here, which is really handy. So, got a couple little spots here and there that something hit this. That might have been why I laid it on the trash can. I'm not sure if this paint is going to hold up or not either. So, may have to sand this down a little bit. Definitely going fancy with this headache rack has been quite a slowdown on time. Been messing with this for quite a while. Okay, well I know how difficult it was to get this thing started when I had tons of room, so wow, that's actually pretty good. I should have measured that where the bracket was so I could drill the other one the same height. Oh well. I don't know if I can get it or not. Okay, well there's that one. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I've got a red, yellow, and black. I don't have any black wires, so I'm going to turn it into brown. So I've got one of those for each of my lights. I'm going to drill into here and fish those wires that way. And I'm going to leave my spools up here because I won't know how long I'll need them. And luckily I've got two sets. So I've got a set of yellow, red, and brown, yellow, red, and brown. And then I'm just going to run a fish, just any wire in here because I'll have to fish in my connector from my backup camera or my backup thingy. So that's what I'm going to do here. God, that's still not quite there. But it'll work. Look at that. Okay, so there's a bushing in there. That's the only size bushing I had on hand. So I think it's a little bit larger than it needs to be, but that's okay. Okay, I hooked all these wires together and I gave them the little flat pin connectors so that I can unplug them if I ever need to change the lights out. And I won't have to get back in here and do any wiring. So now what I want to do is wire up my connectors for my lights. First thing I want to do here is get rid of these small ground connectors because they won't fit on my studs. That thing definitely needs to push out. Okay, I got this headache rack on. My angles were all off. I did a bunch of stuff off camera. It's all jacked up. It looks like crap. But check this out. This was a piece of scrap I had. And I think it's going to go right there. Something like that. So I need to fabricate another piece of this with the diamond plate facing out. Okay, now I have a left and a right. Okay, I'm pretty thrilled with that. Okay, now I'm to the point where I need to close this gap right here. So I'm hoping I can just bang on it with my VFH, and that'll do it. Looks like I've got a little bit of weld to fill in there, but that should do it. Important tip, if the hammer you're using is not working, go find a bigger one. Okay, I got that wire fished and plugged in to my camera that's right here. So plugged into that camera right there. So let's see if it did anything. Oh, look at that.
We're proceeding. Release the parking brake.
So that's going to be my camera that looks out over the cargo area. And then this one will be the one that looks out at the ball hitch for hooking onto trailers. So I should be able to use this one too for hooking onto goosenecks. So cool. Well, it's coming together. I've got to run some wires for my lights, the brake lights and then the work lights, but that's all pretty well in place. I just need to hook them up. So yeah, cool deal. I'm still working on some wiring here, so I wanted to show you what I've got going on. I have got a 4-flat connector underneath the truck here, and I've got, this is a splitter here. And so what I'm going to end up doing here is running these two lights, these brake lights, into one of these, and the ones on the bed of the truck into one. And so you'll be able to have like a quick disconnect. So if you take a look here, the instructions for the lights say that the black wire is for tail light, red is for your turn signal, white is ground. I've already got the ground situated up there. And so now all I need to do is I've got passenger and driver labeled here so I know where I'm at. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire these lights into, I think, a female one of these guys. And so this will plug in at the back. So it'll make more sense once I get going here. But the point is, it's all going to, the bed's going to be a quick disconnect. So if I ever have to take the bed off, all I have to do is take the bolts out, and then the electrical will basically go with the bed. So that's what I'm working on now. For my tail light, the tail light is going to go to that side as well, so I only need one tail light. So I can splice this brown wire into the passenger and the driver's side. So I'll work on that here in a sec. As far as the passenger goes, which is over here, this one is going to be my right. So that one's going to be green for right turn according to the 4-flat. So that's going to be green, which I've got right here. So I didn't give myself as much of a pigtail on this one. It's almost not even worth it for me to mention colors because yours might be different and it just is way too confusing. So just figure out what the function is and what color you need to go to. It's also very, very helpful if you have the right color to keep the color the way it's supposed to be. So this is supposed to be yellow, so I've got yellow. Okay, so these 3 wires are now ready to run back to my 4-flat plug. So I'm going to try to route them. Get this alligator clip thing out of here. Don't need that right now. but I want to try to route them and then cut off my slack and then actually take them and route them under the chassis. I guess it's about time to end part 3 of this build project. And so I'll end it here and then we'll pick up getting the bed attached to the chassis on the next part, part 4. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed part 3. Thank you for watching part 3 of my flatbed build series. And if you like the video, make sure you give it a like and a comment. Let me know what you all think about this. So until next time, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.